Thank you. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And as soon as Kim gets back with the recorder, we'll be ready to call the roll. Yeah, it's working now. I just took 20 years.
Yeah, we have the hard copies. Mine is locked out too, so
You are.
don't worry about it.
You need the passcode?
No, it's so slow, and so
Mine is
So,
slow.
yeah.
I'm going to think.
mine said couldn't find files.
That's right. We'll have an audio copy, so that'll be good. We can publish that.
Notice of the meeting.
This is a special public meeting of the Board of Education for the purpose of conducting the school district's business, and also serves as a public meeting regarding Jacqueline Cannon, who will be retiring. It is the Johnstown-Monroe Board of Education's intent to reemploy Jacqueline Cannon to her same position as building secretary at Johnstown Elementary School. Neither meeting is considered a public community meeting. There's a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes. Upon request of the superintendent, the district shall make reasonable accommodation for a person with a disability to be able to participate in this activity. And we keep a recording of each of these meetings, so the board has them as an administrative aid and serves as a public document of the board.
Thank you. Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
We have a few tonight. Because it's a busy time for interviewing, sometimes when we publish the agenda, we're in the final stages, so you'll see oftentimes TBD in the agenda. So under the consent for J, we have administrative employment, and one of the TBDs right now says it says TBD. I want to insert Benjamin Jagger, intermediate principal. The other change is consent agenda K, which says certified employment. There's also TBD there, so Kyra Steinke, kindergarten teacher. And then one item we want to delete from the agenda, if you go further into the agenda, resolution 2306-101 is our LACA annual service agreement for fiscal year 2024. Treasurer Mrs. Pulley and I are going to ask you remove that, or we'll remove it from the agenda. We're waiting for a final contracted amount, and we don't have that yet, so we'll bring that to you in a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. I'll second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Any public participation? Nope. Moving on. Licking County Soil and Water.
So I believe Liberty's here. She's here. Liberty, we'll ask you to come up if you would to the podium. I think your mom's here too. Grandma? And wanted to highlight. So while she's on her way up there, so tonight we want to salute one of our Johnstown-Monroe middle school students, Liberty Poe, who's in 6th grade. And she recently won the Licking County Soil and Water Poster Contest. The contest was open to all K through 12 students living in Licking County. Participating student competitors were also asked to submit a poster reflecting water pollution awareness, and the opportunity is to win $100. Winners also received a $500 scholarship to be used for advancing science and arts programs. So on May 25th, Lisa Baker visited Johnstown-Monroe schools to present Liberty with her award. We want to hear a little bit from Liberty. Can you walk us through your poster and tell us a little bit about your work and what motivated you for this?
I just thought it would just be fun to do, and I think it would just help our school with our science program, and so I just looked up references. So my mom gave me the idea for the Licking County border, and I just made it I was kind of just doing my own thing.
Yeah, that's good. Liberty, can you tell us about what's your picture, why you put that in there and what's important in that picture?
So what's important is to pick up trash out of the rivers in Licking County and to help the program.
And you also have a piece in there, I think, about some student initiatives, right, on that, because you talk about being the change.
Yeah.
It's kind of scary being at a board meeting like this. It's the same way I feel all the time.
I really like your poster and your ideas, Liberty. I fish quite a bit in the Licking County area and in Delaware County, and it always surprises my husband and I what we see along the banks that is washed up. But I see you have a beaver and a beaver dam in there.
Mhm.
So we go to Allen Creek quite a bit. So you see the beaver dams over there, don't
Yeah.
you? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Excellent. Looks very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Well, Liberty, thanks for sharing that with us. And, I think it's important to realize that you were awarded this over many other students. So thank you very much for your work and also coming here tonight. Thanks to your family for helping to support as well, too.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Kind of good to always remind ourselves like why we're here, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that the board gets involved with, but these are the exciting aspects of it.
Yes.
Thanks.
So you're
Okay,
here.
thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Liberty. For those of you that know me, litter is probably my number one pet peeve, and one thing that we as Johnstown sports, certainly, and every group that I've seen, we really strive to leave places better than when we found it. And every athlete that I've seen that work with has always cleaned up better when we left the field. Same thing. Anything we do as Johnstown folks, we tend to leave it better than we found it. And this is just another example of someone stepping up and doing that and pointing it out. So I do appreciate it. Moving on to board committees.
The only board committees we have had since the last meeting were finance. I think Mr. Benton, are you going to review that?
What we talked about? Well, we can. We talked about, basically it was, we were looking at costs again, and we were looking really at salary schedules. We have to come up with salary schedules for everyone for this upcoming year, and we have to have it in place by the end of this month. So I believe we're going to talk about that later tonight in the executive session to try to get some clarity from and some input from the other board members as to what we want to do as we go forward.
We also talked about our desire to purchase land. So if any of you have a miracle, we need one. And we certainly would want to purchase land, but we haven't heard or seen of any that we can afford. So if anyone out there knows of land that we can afford to buy close proximity to our current land, that would be wonderful. So miracles do happen, and we're ready for one.
And donations are appreciated. So we'll throw that out there. I don't know if we'll have any takers, but they're always appreciated.
Thanks, Alan.
Start.
Yeah. Yeah.
And next we have insurance. I think Mrs. Thomas is going to give us an update.
Yes, we met May 11th, and Cheryl Broadway and our insurance teams from each of the buildings were available. We saw some improvement, very slight improvement on the reports, and so that was very exciting. Everybody was excited about that. We also looked at some utilization that was broken down into some specialized summaries. Also, just want to note, because this was a question that has come up in multiple meetings, is about the emergency room visits. So all of our emergency room visits on this report from last year and this year, they've all been validated. So there's no non-emergency type visits that are happening. And our urgent care and convenient clinic visits are down. They're lower than last year, so that's also a good thing. We talked about the employee assistance program, which I think, did we say we were going to get that in the first of the year? Do you remember what we were going to do with that?
We didn't get them until after school was out, so we were going to put them out for the return to school.
So we're going to do the return to school for that, but there was some interesting information about that they provide, not only the emotional support, work-life solutions, but they also have financial resources, legal guidance, and you can do an online will preparation. And so these were some new things that we had not heard previously, and we're going to get those packets or some type of a brochure at the first of the year for that. So that's about what we have for the insurance again.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda.
So resolution 23-06-091 is approval of consent agenda.
Can we get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Swire, you want me to go through these?
Please.
Okay. So treasurer's report. I'm sure you've seen that with Kim or with She's provided permanent appropriation certified estimated resources. She's also provided backup there. Temporary appropriations that will help us start the new fiscal year, and then they'll eventually become permanent. Advance for grant expenditures, that's just the general fund temporarily funding these programs until we get the monies received from the state. Technology inventory is what it says. There's some inventory that we're going to retire. Property, auto, liability insurance, straightforward again is what's there. Board minute meetings, also straightforward. Unpaid leaves, we need the board to approve some leaves of staff that are not typically within their work calendar, so there's some exceptions there. Asking the board to approve. J is administrative employment, so you see Angel King there as the high school principal, and as we talked earlier, Benjamin Jagger, so he will be our intermediate school principal. By the way, Angel is out of town and won't be here tonight. So certified employment, we have, we already had Lisa Allen there, and Kyra Steinke is here, who you heard about earlier. Class ed employment, Erica Hayes to move into the middle school secretary position. And then we have one additional day for Tanya Ballman so that she can help with transition to her new role. And if it's okay with the board, I'd like to have a couple people introduced to you. You've heard about it. Marcia, do you want to start?
Good evening. This is Kyra Steinke, and she is being recommended tonight for the kindergarten position at JES. Kyra comes to us with 6 years of experience from Imagine Groveport and teaching first grade, so I think she'll be a great fit for kindergarten to know what the expectations are as they head to become first graders later. So I'll let Kyra kind of introduce herself a little bit more, just tell about where you're from. And
Hi, everyone. As she said, my name is Kyra. A little bit about myself. I am married to my husband. We've been married for 5 years. We have 2 wonderful boys, 3 and 9 months. I live currently in Heath, Ohio. We've been there for 5 years, and I'm in the process of updating my house to sell it and hopefully move to Johnstown. That's been our goal now for 5-6 years, but housing market, you know how that goes. A little bit about myself, like as she said, I have taught at Imagine Groveport going on 6 years. I've taught first grade and I've loved it, but the drive from Heath to Groveport got to me a little bit more with having 2 kids now at home. And now I'm ready to get closer and get into a community and get established and be part of the community.
Excellent.
Next, I want to introduce Ben Jagger, and we'll ask him to come up and say a couple words too. Ben comes to us from the Olentangy School District. He's currently an assistant principal. While he's making his way up, I do want to thank our interview team. Debbie Seibel has done a tremendous job coordinating, and but we've had quite a bit of support from the building staff level. We've got to know each other quite well through the process, all good stuff. And then even Amy was there, so we appreciate everyone's support, Kendra. They're laughing at me right now, and I'm going to tell them what it is because we were looking at nonverbals of candidates, so they're kind of looking at me without a courtesy here to see. So they're kind of making fun of me, but I'm going to ignore it somewhat. But anyways, this is Ben's time to shine. So Ben, will you get me off the hook here and talk a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everybody. Ben Jagger, father of 8-year-old triplets who go to Big Walnut local schools. My wife and I moved to Ohio 8 years ago. We used to live in Indiana, where I'm originally from, but moved here because this is where the help was for our triplets. So I'm coming to you from Olentangy Berlin High School. I've been there for the last 4 years as assistant principal. I'm really excited to get to know the staff and the community here in Johnstown. We're also looking for land to purchase to build a house, and just like Mr. Benton said, donations would be appreciated as well. So look forward to the opportunity and very excited to be part of this community.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Ben, we know you can handle almost anything because Amanda and I only have a set of twins. So if you have triplets, you can't imagine what that would be like. Because if you have more, you only have 2 hands, and that's very difficult to hold 3 when you only have 2. So you've done it. well, mine are 27 years old.
Mine
just turned 9.
Mine are 9.
So a little bit late, but we can always learn, right?
Debbie, is Lisa Allen here? Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll bring her to the board another time. And as I said, Angel King is out of town. We knew that in advance. I'll bring her to the board, but I know that the board has met Mrs. King already. So. And I think that's, didn't miss anyone, did I? Always check on that before principals. Didn't miss anyone? Good, okay. That's everyone for consent unless there's questions from the board.
Any questions? Comments? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
On to the treasurer recommendations.
The first recommendation is to approve several donations. These are for the scholarships primarily that were awarded this past graduating class, particularly for the Karen Hartman Memorial Scholarship, the Educators Scholarship, and the James Worthen Citizenship Award. There was also a donation for some office supplies for the intermediate school.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
A second.
Discussion? Obviously, thank you to all those that make these donations to make the scholarships continual. They're certainly appreciated.
These are former educators in our district. Karen Hartman was, and James Worthen was.
Former educators, correct. And current educators donating to them. So appreciate that. Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
2306093 is approval of the then and now invoice. We originally had intended to pay this invoice to Meta via LACA. LACA was going to collect the money and pay it out. There was a miscommunication somewhere along the line, and now we are paying for it. Already been budgeted, already appropriated. It's just we are now paying Meta instead of LACA, so therefore we have to approve this then and now because it's over the statutory threshold.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Discussion? It was a tie, so I don't know who she's going to write. We'll see it in the minutes next week. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Dr. Wagner, over to you.
Okay, superintendent recommendations. Resolution 23-06-094, certified reduction of extended days to contract.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
I know the board had seen this. You may think this is deja vu, but you actually reduced 5 days for this current school year. So this is moving forward as we think about 10 more days. Nothing wrong in this. It's just as we look at the needs, there's not any summer needs. And Mrs. Arbogast came to us and said, she thought this was better utilization of district resources. And we have another resolution later on that talks about adding an additional person, which will help smooth this out a bit too.
Excellent. Any questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-06-095 is a public meeting to reemploy SCRS retirant Mrs. Jacqueline Cannon. The board doesn't have to, there's no action required on this. So what the process is real quick is there's a 3-step process when someone retires and then there's a reemployment. This is the second step. So if there's anyone in the audience and the community who wanted to express some concerns about this, this is their opportunity. The last meeting we introduced it. And then if there's nothing here from the public meeting today, then at the next board meeting, most likely would see a resolution then to reemploy Mrs. Cannon.
Any public comment? We'll move along.
Okay. Resolution 23-06-096 is our elementary school video camera purchase.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Discussion?
No, I think it's rather straightforward. This is, I know the board had seen this in advance, but this is just to continue to either replace and or expand some of our video surveillance in the district.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-06-097 is our Curriculum Associates Agreement. This is what is called iReady, as we more commonly know it. And this is to provide diagnostic services, just over $48,000 there is written.
Can I get a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-06-098 is creation of Johnstown Intermediate Student Support Specialist position.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion?
What this is, as we've looked at needs and services, we've been able to look at reapportioning some staff. So if there's 2 paraprofessional positions we don't fill, they sit between JES and JIS. We would like to create this new position so that we can better serve the needs of students, and that'll help Kendra in her role as well too. And then I've already had questions about which building Kendra's going to go to if this is approved, and we haven't answered that yet. So,
But they will facilitate the needs of both buildings.
well, there'll be dedicated service for each of the buildings. Then, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, if that's a good question though, because one of the things that we're looking at is how do we better serve needs, and we have some social work services. We have kind of referred to as counseling services. We're going to be looking more at a continuum of services. So there might be an opportunity where we need 2 people, 1 building for a period of time or for an event, and then, but generally they're going to have prescribed. The challenge with the current arrangement, and I appreciate everything that was done this year, is that Kendra is only able to be at 1 building at a time, and then, of course, it's the day she's not there that some of the challenges surface. So we want to make sure that we're more comprehensive. This position also will be helping them with intervention for academics. It will be a tie-in with some of our curricular initiatives as well. And again, this is kind of what I would call addition by subtraction, because we can reapportion staff. So we don't expect a large increase, if any, with this financially.
Any additional questions? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-06-099 is creation of a .5 Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Technology position, school district.
Can I get a motion?
So,
Can I get a second? We'll still let you second it if you like.
I thought maybe she was tired.
So what this is a multi-step process too. So if the board approves this tonight, then we will post the job. We already have an internal candidate who's very interested in this position, but we will post the job as expected for 5 days. And then if there's applicants, we'll interview. And then we expect to bring our candidate to the board at the next board meeting in July.
Any other questions, comments? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Resolution 23-06-0100 is Project Lead the Way training stipend, and this is for Cindy Boston to go for 2 days of training for Project Lead the Way.
Can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Boer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Any additional board comments?
I have a couple.
Yep.
Just want to thank everyone for a great graduation. I see Mr. Kusenberg's already left, so.
He had a family commitment, so I'll relate to him. He asked me, so I'm going to.
Is he involved in graduation?
No.
Oh, gosh.
He actually is a very strong participant and organizer of that. And also just want to recognize the maintenance team because they worked very diligently during that time period to get the school grounds looking spectacular for graduation, and we appreciate that, along with all their other regular duties that they do. Also wanted to ask a question about the numbers, the graduation numbers. Did you have a chance to look at the numbers after that?
What would you like to know?
The numbers that I saw on Friday, and I discussed with you, it looked like there were 12 seniors that did not graduate.
There were three, I won't give the names, there were
I
three
don't-
seniors who did not graduate, and I have more specifics. One of, well, I won't, let me, I won't.
The
do any
numbers
more
were
than
off
Yeah.
in what we saw.
Yeah. What happens with graduation, it's always interesting, and every school district is like this, is the number of students varies. But we have students who, we have to sometimes really work with them right up until the day of, or close to there on it. But, and then there's a group of students that sometimes don't meet that deadline, and then there's a summer graduation, and then there's some students we can't get across. So there is actually 3 right now that we don't expect to graduate, and I won't give you specifics, but I can tell you that with the high school team, they've worked diligently.
And I know they would work diligently.
Yeah.
And go the extra mile to do everything.
Yep.
We had those conversations in the curriculum meeting, I think, too.
Yep.
Just the numbers that I saw on Friday kind of alarmed me a little bit. And then I also wondered if we should be looking at some type of mentorship within the community, members possibly that they could share, come in to speak to groups of seniors to kind of share, this is like outside and why it's so important, but try to connect some of those kids to that, to some of our mentorship possibly. And maybe we already do that.
Well, I think honestly, there's more we can do. And when the board approved, remember we were talking about Marissa and reorganizing the online school. We're going to have a better articulation now, really, well, throughout the district, but really 7-12. When you approve the program of studies, there's pathways built in there. And then with MJ now and with Debbie Merrill, we'll be able to differentiate some responsibilities. So yes, we're going to be looking at that more. Because I think what we need to do on those pathways is get children, students invested early. There's really 1 of 3 pathways post high school. You either have to go employed, enlisted, or enrolled. And so I expect more of that. So I think it's a good point, and it'll get us one step closer. We can't, I don't want to sit here and tell you a lot of stories, but sometimes there's unique situations. People move into the district as a senior or late, and you're trying to close gaps. But I always think there's more we can do, and that's, I think you'll see more in the future. And Mr. Busenberg and his team has a lot of credit to that for what we have planned for the future.
I know I took it personally, but we didn't have 100% graduation rate.
Exactly.
And I know everybody does. So I'm not happy that it's 3, but a little bit better that it's not 12.
Right.
So
Yeah, and some of those, without going too much into specifics, but I know the board will see some of this, is that we have some interventions we have to impose. So those numbers of 12 were accurate at that point. Then we were able to close some gaps. Yeah, and some online instruction. Our staff did a great job in closing gaps too.
and the staff has to be connected.
Yep.
Obviously. They're the ones on the ground doing the work. It's not me.
But I think you're right. The takeaway is, though, 3 is still 3, and we need to do everything we can. So
3 kids in our community that we
Yep.
watch grow up. So we can do better.
appreciate that.
That's all I had.
Do you have additional comments?
I have
Yeah.
a few things. One is there's a few items that we're going to, our fiscal year ends June 30th, so we're going to need another board meeting before the end of June. I want to know the board's availability. How about, I know next Monday is a federal holiday. Would you have availability sometime next week? We can do a 5 o'clock meeting again, or Tuesday, Wednesday next week. I don't think there's anything on the district calendar on those 2 days that I'm aware of. How about Tuesday at 5 o'clock?
That's fine.
We do a special meeting? Sam, I know he's got a lot with his work schedule.
I have a meeting until 4:30 that day. Yeah.
What about Wednesday? Or we can do 5:30.
I just never know what traffic, coming out of downtown at 4:30, you just never know what you're going to get.
We can do Wednesday at 5
Wednesday
o'clock?
works.
I appreciate
It's on
that.
Wednesday the 21st.
How about Wednesday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
That'd be all right.
Wednesday 21st.
That's all right.
It shouldn't be a real long meeting, but one of the things we
And I can do earlier that day.
So what's the time, 5 o'clock on Wednesday? Make sure I put the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I'm available earlier that day if any. It doesn't matter.
5 would be fine.
Okay.
That's okay.
5 o'clock on Wednesday the 21st.
I appreciate that. That'll allow us also to load payroll for the, because we're coming up on July 1st, will be the new fiscal year. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so we'll send notice out, we'll send invites. So that's Wednesday at 5.
Are we not meeting
Are we
on the
not meeting the
26th?
26th or will we?
We did not schedule.
It's not on the schedule. I just want to
Right,
make sure we're not
because-
planning to
yeah.
also add that.
Can
Okay.
you get end of year ready by the 21st? So if we meet on the 21st, we won't need the 26th. Okay. Good. Okay, so we'll do that. We'll do end of the year then. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Wanted to bring your attention, the next item is just on the Licking County League. I don't know if you've heard anything about, they're talking about a policy regarding the ejection of fans. And you might start hearing more about that. So Robbie Brickner has brought this to the attention of Mr. Busenberg and me. And the idea here is that our league is looking at fan ejections, misconduct and what occurs at contests and what we should do. So they've scripted some aspects of this. Robbie's going to look at this further, and there's a multi-step process. I'm just giving you a high level today. There's parts of this that mirror the Ohio High School Athletic Association, but then there's also more stringent requirements within Licking County. So we want to make sure that there's a universal understanding across the county, but then there's also the opportunity, like maybe we want to do some things differently in Johnston. So just put it on your radar, just watch it. I think that there might even be some news articles around this coming up in August is what we're hearing. I don't control the news media, but that's what we're hearing. And just for something to think about, in some of the ejection policies, when they have inappropriate fan behavior, they'll talk about, for example, like a 2-game suspension. And I always have questions about, is there a universal way to implement such things? And one of the things we were talking about and looking at this is basketball has 22 games typically. So 2 games there is different than football with 10 games. So we need to look at some of those things. Baseball is typically 27. So yeah. And then we're going to look at enforcement, like how does that work? There's a lot of questions with this too, because how does this work if, you're at Johnstown as a fan, not a Johnstown resident, and then you're suspended? Are we policing that? When you go to, how do you do that? There's some equity issues we're looking at too, because typically your varsity sports will play over the winter break. Your JVs don't often play as much over the break, so you could go a longer break. There's just some time elements there. A lot of questions there. So nothing you need to do, but just kind of want to put it on your radar. Like you're going to hear more about it. And I was very pleased that Robbie brought this forward. Well, that's interesting because what it brings the question is about due process, and I don't see a lot with due process right now, and something we have questions about. It's modeled generally off the Ohio High School Athletic Association student code of conduct, but there's an affirmative right when you're a student, and there's an appellate process. So we need to look at some of that.
Free speech.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, how's this important? A lot of questions on it. Now, understandably, I know there's some concerns, and there always are. So sports can bring out a lot of emotion in people, which is okay. So again, nothing that you need to do with it, but I just kind of want to put it on your radar so you've heard it. I had on here graduation, but Anna already covered it. I just want to second everything you said because I think everything went well. We're going to work at the PA system a little bit there. We need some significant reverb there that we need to look at. But otherwise, I thought everything went very well. And Derek really is to be commended. I mean, he did a tremendous job.
Yeah,
that.
I was just joking.
No, I'm
Derek
not.
Derek lives and breathes
No,
graduation.
it's good.
So.
I wanted to give him compliments on the weather, but that's probably too much. So. But I've heard the stories about the 38-degree graduation, so that can be tough. But I want to second everything Mrs. Thomas says. It's good. Student enrollment, I wanted to just give the board an update because I know you've seen a little bit of that data. So just nothing you need to write down so much, but just to give you a perspective on things. So one of the things with student enrollment, just before I give you numbers, is when you anchor it, and this is based on the state software, when you anchor it, we're good on that date. It might change. And I'll give you an example. If you were to look at student enrollment in our school district or any other school districts in the state of Ohio, you could say on May 15th, this is the date, and there's a student who's absent, But we may find out afterwards that student moved, so you'll go back and reconcile that data, and they'll say, okay, now we're down a student. So what I'm going to give you is August 1st. So actually, our enrollment dropped a little bit this year. It had even dropped lower throughout the school year, and some of this is because land's been procured and people have been outside the school district or no longer here.
Forced out.
Yeah, forced out. So last year we ended, and this is June 1st to June 1st, 1,656 students. This year we ended at 1,629 students. So there was a little bit of a decrease there. I'm sure that won't last forever. And then we also have, there's, you know, I know you've seen some of this. There's some students who are, those are all the students that are served directly in the school district. When we look at students responsible for, so those could be students, sorry, those would be students on scholarships, maybe not a district placement. If they're full-time post-secondary, they're considered outside district. If you're part-time, you're counted in that 1629 this year. So our numbers comparatively, last year total in the district at 1751, and that was compared to the 1656. And then we ended the year 1732, which is compared to the 1629. So a little bit of decrease in both situations there. And I think you saw in the Friday report, if you looked at that, we were seeing a little bit more of a transient behavior too, because although our numbers are down, we saw, if I recall, 108 registrations already, not including kindergarten. So we're seeing more transition. Now that might be because of the things we talked about earlier with land changes or property changes, but nothing the board needs to do on that. Just want to make sure that that's something we're looking at. And the last thing, I just had a miscellaneous, the last thing I wanted to say is I want to second all that about interviewing. And, I always hear when I was coming here about tremendous community, tremendous school district, and that's been borne out many times for me, and it's impressive. But to see the staff come in and how many times they've come in to interview and how engaged they are, it's really been tremendous. I wish I could share that more with people, but we believe that's important in the process. And after the school year's ended, we still have people coming in to give up their time, people calling in from vacation to help. So it's really tremendous in our staff and community. And what it does is we're not only looking at the X's and O's or the content, but we want to see the chemistry and all too. And so I know Ben went through some interviews most recently. It was our last one, and we were just watching the chemistry, and it really works. So I just want to underscore everything we're doing. Debbie Seibel, again, has been our quarterback on this, and has just done a tremendous job. Everything from paper screening to initial screening online, and then all the way through to the end here. And so just want to thank everyone for that, and really proud of our team and what we're building for the future.
Sounds great.
That's all I have.
Appreciate that. All right. At this time, I think we're going to ask for a motion to move into executive session. If I can get a motion. Can I get a second? That's listed, but I guess we can read it.
Yeah. It's consideration of appointment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. And we do not expect to ask the board for a vote after the meeting.
I'll second it.
Call the roll.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mrs. Brewer?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Swager?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Thank you. And again, no action expected afterwards.